Big 12 is the most open conference championship race in the country. We thought that coming into the year, and boy, we think that through the first 3 weeks of the season. Drake Tolock on Big 12, returning to join me here on the show. Drake, I want to say Utah will figure it out, but at this point, I don't know if I can trust Cam Rising to stay on the field as much as I can trust Jamarcus Russell to read a playbook. So what are you making of the Big 12 right now? Because teams like BYU, who we're going to talk about later in today's show, they're kind of tossing their hat into the ring, sort of, kind of, maybe. TCU and UCF both look good. Who's winning this conference?
Yeah, Utah at this point is still number one in my power rankings, and I'm not sure if you can take them away. They were there preseason. They were the fancy pick from the national media to win the Big 12. They were the best roster on paper, and they still have that by and large. There have been injuries already on the defense that are hurting Utah, and with Cam Rising out, this is not the same football team. Isaac Wilson stepped up in the second half, looked a lot better against Utah State, and showed you he can be a more competent backup option than anybody they had last year as they were rotating a couple of guys trying to win in 2023. You can find more continuity with Wilson. However, he's not Cam Rising. And without Cam Rising, I cannot trust Utah. With him, we haven't learned yet. He's played four quarters of football this season so far. And in those 4 quarters, I haven't looked and said, all right, that is the quarterback that makes the difference in the Big 12 so far. However, again, still number one in my power rankings. But then there's Kansas State, Avery Johnson. Every third throw is one of the worst throws I've seen in college football. Oh, he's open. And then Avery Johnson just sails it to the hot girl in the third row of the student section. But the other 2 throws, and one of the 3 is going to be an elite pass, and the kid can run for days. Oklahoma State, Alan Bowman leads the conference in passing yards. And
I'm trying not to say anything. I'm struggling with that being a real stat through more than one game.
Because we sat here weeks ago and last week and the week before that and said, Alan Bowman's not going to push the needle. And I still don't think Alan Bowman pushes the needle more than Avery Johnson or Cam Rising. But he has played his role to this point, and the stats line up. And granted, they're not playing world beaters or even the top tier of the Big 12 or teams equivalent yet, but Oklahoma State is still certainly a player. Now, UCF, I like KJ Jefferson a lot. Same thing as Avery Johnson. Every third pass, he just throws it right into the ground. Like, I'm going to spike it. But then again, those 13 completions he had, there were clutch moments where he leads his team back from 28-7 on the road to win a football game. And his legs, he can run for days. Iowa State, don't forget them. They're a player in winning the Big 12 Conference. Rocco Beck, Abu Sama, Jalen Knoll. They showed you that offense can score 20 points in one half against Iowa. They are dangerous enough to win the Big 12. And then you already mentioned, you have the BYUs, the TCUs, even a sneaky, could Arizona put a couple things together, not based on the way they played against Kansas State, but still they've got the offensive talent. And Arizona State has maybe the best running back in the conference in Cam Scatterbo. At least he's shown that he can be that kind of playmaker for the Sun Devils. The Big 12's got 5 teams to me that can win the conference right now, and another 2, 3, 4 that can vie for it.
Arizona is not one of those teams to me. I didn't feel that way about them coming into the year. They have backed that up through 3 games with a bad defensive showing, a bad offensive showing, and a bad overall showing once they played a real football team. And I know that Noah Fafita and T-Mac are great, but I felt this watching the Kansas State game on Friday night, Drake, that Arizona has got the 11-4 connection and literally nothing else that they can rely on.
Yeah.
I don't see anything else. And then I texted this to you after the game ended. My takeaway from UCF going to TCU and winning in what was just an incredible football game, really disappointing for Sonny Dykes Horned Frogs to blow a 28-7 lead at home. My takeaway, Drake, is that both of those teams are good. We talked about TCU being one of the most underrated teams in the country, certainly the most underrated in the Big 12 entering this season. I think Josh Hoover is legit. I think UCF with Gus Malzahn is exactly what I thought they'd be. Yeah. I thought they'd lose the football game. It's a coin flip, go either way. I think Arizona comes down from the conference title contending ring. Utah could if Cam Rising's not going to be healthy. And I think both UCF and TCU can catapult themselves into that conversation.
Yeah, in the Arizona conversation, I'm not too high on them, but I'm still going to leave them in the category, in that middle of the pack category. Got to remember, the 5 teams that I named didn't feature Arizona, and past that, the 6 through 9 range feature a whole lot of squads that are at least comparable. They have that one glaring hole, whether it be offensively or defensively or inconsistent performances. And as for TCU, Spencer, they threw the ball 53 times. and UCF threw the ball 22 times. That stat right there is not conducive to a 28-7 comeback for UCF. Why was TCU still throwing the football in this game? They ran the ball 17 times for 58 yards all game. That is coaching malpractice. You are up 28-7. Just run the football. And that guy with the last name Briles, son of Art Briles, former coach at Baylor, and feels like half the TCU staff has some connection to that staff, goes, ha, we can throw it through the air and stop the clock. And that's exactly what they did. They never established the ground game. And when you're up by 21 points and your opponent's rushing for nearly 300, you have got to do, he's gashing your defense on the ground. Gus Malzahn is, you have got to do something to run some clock. And TCU didn't.
I share the concern about the defense and the run game, but when you have an explosive pass game, that's what Sonny Dykes' team was a couple years ago.
I'm not that worried about the TCU defense. And even watching this game in the second half, I was like, yeah, there was a breakdown, no doubt. But the offense was like, look at us. We can throw the ball and keep our defense on the sideline for a minute and 15 seconds. That doesn't help a defense that needed help.
Every time I've watched Josh Hoover play, I've been impressed. And
God bless, that kid's good.
He's good. I think he's really good. I think he's really, really good. Two teams that are not really good one of them still could be, perhaps. What is happening to our Kansas Jayhawks, Drake? What in the world is going on? You talk about one of the most disappointing teams in college football this season. I talked about NC State yesterday. I talked about Kansas. I'm sure West Virginia fans are really disappointed with the 1-2 start that they have. I predicted them to start 1-2, and so I'm not particularly shocked that West Virginia is regressing back from what they were a season ago. But these two teams square off this week, and just let this go through your head, everybody, in Big 12 land out there. One of these fan bases is going to be 1-3. 1-3 after this game, which is in Morgantown. I think the loser can kiss their Big 12 championship hopes goodbye, because if Kansas, you're not winning this game, you can only lose one more to get in the conference title game, and you need some help. And boy, it just doesn't feel like you're going to have the team to do that if you lose your third consecutive ball game. What do you make of the Mountaineers and the Jayhawks this week?
This is the we might really, really suck bowl. And whoever loses this game really, really sucks. And West Virginia was bad under Neil Brown for a couple of years, and Kansas was bad for more than that in the last 2 decades. This game is...
Can you please use a word stronger than bad to describe Kansas before Leipold got there and got things going?
Yeah, putrid, like doormat, bottom of the barrel, losing to FCS teams every year. 1-11 was a miracle. West Virginia, this is a keep your job game for Neil Brown, as last week kind of was too. The way they lost, everyone points and goes, how do we give up 14 points in the last 4 minutes? That guy. And goes back to the Neil Brown 2022 when you thought that he was dead to rights. And for Kansas, Lance Leipold is obviously very safe. They could go 2-10 and he would still be very, very safe in Lawrence. But this game it puts a big question mark on Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator. So each school has at least one coach represented in this game that's on the chopping block if they lose.
Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Appreciate it. That is going to be an exciting game.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel's where I go to make money. I say, hey, FanDuel, I want BYU to beat SMU. Hey, FanDuel, I want BYU to cover against Wyoming. Hey, FanDuel, I want Texas Tech to beat the brakes off North Texas. And FanDuel says, do it. And they have something different for you. Now through Saturday, September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That is until September 22nd. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Visit them. Do it today.